Lewis Hamilton is now the winningest F1 driver of all time. He has more victories and more pole positions than any other driver in history, and it seems almost inevitable that he will go on to beat the 7-title record that he shares with Michael Schumacher. While his natural driving talent, racecraft and wizard-like ability to manage tyres have been cornerstones of his success in F1 races, what we don't always get to see is the work that a great driver carries out behind the scenes within a team. As was the case for Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost and Michael Schumacher, the key to F1 greatness has never been found in simply taking the glory on a Sunday before disappearing between races. So let's take a look at the key ways that Hamilton works away from the track, both at home and at the Mercedes factory, to help push both of them forwards. When Hamilton arrived at Mercedes in 2013, he had big shoes to fill, taking the place of the legend Schumacher, who had returned to F1 in 2010. Hamilton knew he needed to step up his game in terms of playing a central role in driving the team and car development forward, just as Schumacher had done throughout his F1 career. Something that both Lewis and Mercedes boss Toto Wolff often mention in interviews is that being successful in sport isn't just about focusing on your strengths. You'll have probably heard them both talk about not allowing complacency to creep in right after they storm to victory. But even after wrapping up the titles with plenty of races in hand, Hamilton's process each year with Mercedes has been to hold a meeting of senior team figures to write down a list of the critical things that they think need to be improved for the following year. Such openness and desire not to sugarcoat everything is important for allowing both team and driver to understand what steps forward can be made, and also to make sure that resource is not wasted on areas that make little difference to car performance. Hamilton has shown time and again in qualifying in the races how he's a master of the current generation of Pirelli rubber. Whether it's switching them on for that last lap effort in Q3 or managing to extend stints to run them for much longer than anticipated in races, Hamilton has proved to be fully on top of it. He says that getting a full grasp of tyre characteristics has been something he valued in GP2 and was key to some of his greatest successes in that category. Just look at his charge in Turkey in 2006 when he came back from P18 early on to finish second. Hamilton says when he started in F1 with McLaren, the team were not open to listening to him or being challenged about how they managed the tyres. They just did their own thing, he said. But since arriving at Mercedes, the dialogue about tyres has been extensive, and together with his engineers, they've honed the management of tyre temperatures and how the setup has such a big impact in both switching on and looking after the rubber. Mercedes may have had the best engine in F1 for many years, but much of its recent success has been helped by an impressive chassis too. One interesting aspect about Mercedes is that it's pretty much been alone in electing for a longer wheelbase concept of car. The team felt that the advantage of a longer car, which has extra downforce because there is more car for the airflow to interact with, always outweighed the downside, being less nimble on some of the tight and twisty tracks. But rather than sit back and accept that downside as a compromise, Hamilton has worked tirelessly with the team to overcome that problem. As a driver who likes the front end of a car to be firmly planted, he's not particularly favoured the understeer characteristic that the Mercedes cars have tended to have. Hamilton has therefore been instrumental in pushing Mercedes, ever since the turbo hybrid era began in 2014, to alter the aero balance of the car and shift it to the rear. Things stepped up a bit too in pre-season testing this year, for example, when Hamilton proposed a different way of setting up the new W11 to better suit him. The changes that he proposed seem to have done the trick, with Hamilton revealing recently that the difficulty he and teammate Valtteri Bottas have faced recently with car rotation was no longer there. Sometimes what Hamilton asks for doesn't work, but a lot of the time it does, and it's the openness of that dialogue and the willingness to try things without fear of getting it wrong that have helped Mercedes hone in on the best solution. The impact of the coronavirus pandemic changed the world in 2020. For many of us, the lockdown meant finding new ways to spend time and entertain yourself at home. Hamilton, however, says he saw it as an opportunity to improve. With the extra time he had available, thanks to the F1 season being put on hold, he spent time better understanding his own weaknesses from 2019. In particular, this meant putting more emphasis on his single-lap qualifying performances. With teams running identical Pirelli rubber this year, Hamilton could pore through the data from 2019 to get a better grasp of tyre behaviour and management to ensure he could extract the maximum grip when it was needed for those final efforts in Q3. But there was also time to reflect on individual car setups, the best settings that were needed, and the wider picture of car development. Hamilton also made sure to invest time in himself. He began practicing meditation, reading more books, including self-help manuals, and taking up yoga. He says he has come out of lockdown understanding himself better and able to make more use of his energy and improve his time management. Being more rounded off track has been important for helping him on it. What other drivers impressed off track as well as on it? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed for more videos.